And it's a new dawn in UK's relationship with the EU as the royal assent has now been appended to the Brexit deal. And joining us from the UK, from London, to have a conversation on the new Brexit deal is journalist Amina Taylor. Good to have you join us, Amina Taylor. Help us understand the general sentiments in Britain about this deal.
Well, it's twofold, and Happy New Year to you and your viewers once more. But there's a sense here that the COVID pandemic has pretty much overtaken the jazz and pizzazz that Boris Johnson would have wanted to follow this deal. The idea that from today we're in a new relationship with Europe, it's almost anticlimactic, to be honest, because if you look at some of the aspects of the deal, which I have not scrolled through all 1,000 pages, but I've taken the key points. And when you encounter things like, for example, people who are residents of different foreign countries, what that means to their ability to live and work in the United Kingdom and vice versa, the ability of business people here to sell and trade their goods with their European counterparts, something like Europol, the inter-European crime-fighting agency that Britain will no longer have real-life access to. It will be an observer in the same way that the United States is and has a presence in the building, but it won't have real-life information. We're talking about lack of access to some of the financial services, who will have to reapply in order to trade in ways that they didn't have to just a couple months ago. So Boris Johnson talks in a lot of blustery terms, and we talk about sovereignty being returned to the United Kingdom. It's very difficult for myself as a Brit this morning to see what the positives are for Brits and even for the European Union. This is a situation that came about because a prime minister in the shape of David Cameron wanted to appease his backbenchers. Flash forward several years, and we're in a situation where Britain is having to rebuild relationships in a lot of these cases with the 27 remaining EU member states. And why? So we can say we have sovereignty back? I mean, the Brexit bill is now law, but I think we'll be
let's talk about this. I want to pick on something you said, which is about building relations or rebuilding relationships. And one of those relationships right now is that of Scotland. And we know that Scotland voted over 60% to remain in the European Union. And just days ago, the Scottish National Party voted against this bill. We've seen a tweet by the Scottish First Prime Minister Nicola Sturgeon saying something about how the EU, they're waiting to rejoin the EU. What does this mean? How are Britons reacting to this call for that referendum all over again in Scotland?
Well, let me tell you something. I was in Scotland first for the referendum back in 2014 when it was a slim loss to the independence campaign. I was also in Scotland reporting on Brexit and the way in which Scots voted completely separately in part to the rest of the United Kingdom. Now, Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister, was campaigning on the grounds that this referendum was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Scots. But the situation has changed so fundamentally that it's very difficult to not agree with the point that perhaps this needs to be referred to the Scottish people once more. Because one of the fundamentals and one of the things that people do believe edged it in favor of remaining a part of the Union was that Scotland would be ostensibly leaving the European Union, which would have seen it be kind of set adrift. Now Scotland are saying, wait, we thought we were voting to remain within the United Kingdom, but a United Kingdom that was a part of the European Union. Now that is not the case. We demand that we look at this issue again. And the Prime Minister is going to be very difficult for him not to be able to look into this issue more fully, because if you look at the statistics now coming out in favor of a yes vote for independence in Scotland, it's now looking as if it's 55-45, which a decade or so ago, this was completely unfathomable. I mean, does Boris Johnson want to be the man who is the Prime Minister going down in record as having broken up the United Kingdom? At this stage, I'm afraid it's not looking good for his legacy.
Really not looking good. Again, when you look at the fact that there is now an effective border between Northern Ireland and the rest of UK, which means that Northern Ireland would have a better relationship with the Republic of Ireland than it has with the rest of UK. This could lead to more tensions, wouldn't it?
Well, that was a sticking point during Theresa May's tenure, and this idea of the hard border returning between the north of Ireland and the island of Ireland. Now, they've managed to kind of find a sticking plaster way about this by having a kind of electronic border where there is no physical manifestation of the bad old days. I mean, those of us who are old enough to remember the troubles, the tensions that existed between that part of Ireland and mainland United Kingdom. They fought hard to not have that physical manifestation re-emerge. But I think as the practicalities emerge of how this is going to look, what's going to happen if perhaps there are differing rules in Brussels and the north of Ireland wanted to make itself more compatible with that. I mean, you're going to have a situation here where you're looking at two different rules for pretty much the same country. I don't see going forward how this will be practically beneficial to anyone. And also, may I add a place like Gibraltar, now the rock that's between Spain and the United Kingdom here, that's having some tensions as well, because we know that Spain has always said Britain's 300 plus year or so occupation, as they see it, of the island of Gibraltar is problematic. They've now, again, got a kind of sticky plaster solution to this, where there'll be no restrictions between those coming and going from mainland Spain. But what does that mean going forward? I think what this deal has shown us is that the politicians have come to a kind of cobbled together mid-solution for this. But as things begin to work themselves out in practical terms, we're going to see the real bumps in the road. And really, there are individuals and politicians waking up this morning asking, was it worth it? The Conservatives say yes. I'm yet to be convinced.
Quite complicated and complex Brexit deal it is. So we'll see how things play out in the coming days. Journalist Amina, thanks for talking to us.